How would you like to buy a property one day and then learn the next day that it's worth 11% more than what you paid for it? What you're about to see is a conversation between me, Chief Data Scientist at Microburbs, and John Manciameli, one of Australia's top real estate educators. Our goal is to turn you from being one of these herd following, underperforming investors to one who is acting on special information. So we're going to try and untangle this mess for you so that you can get an above average return. Let's go. I'm joined here by John Manciameli, one of the top course runners in Australia with a wealth of mortgage broking and financial experience. And he is also a user of Microburbs. And here at Microburbs, I in particular as the founder really love talking to users, especially high-end users like John. So John, thank you very much for joining me.
Wow, what an intro. Thank you so much, Luke. Thank you.
So today we're going to talk about good data versus bad data. How does Microburbs go about getting data? Why can you trust the quality of Microburbs data? What do we actually do to ensure the quality? In what ways is it not quality? And what does this really mean for you? So as an investor, what's the importance of good data? Some of the answers here might surprise you. So it's not simply a matter of just accurate versus not accurate. There's a whole lot of questions about appropriateness of the data. Does it actually empower you to make decisions, or does it distract you and give you analysis paralysis? Does it mislead you? What are your thoughts on that good data and bad data, John, in your lengthy experience?
It's such an important question because we never want to believe anyone's opinion. We never want to believe the media. And obviously, we only just want to believe data. And it's great to see Australians start to use data in the true sense of the word. Like finally, we're starting to see a shift into using data instead of someone's opinion. And so the quality of that data is absolutely paramount. And if you don't mind, Luke, I'd like to share a little story because it's all about results, right? And the viewers might be interested to know that I had a client settle yesterday on a property for 415 in the Perth market where the data was suggesting that there was going to be growth. And I was so humbled to see my client be so happy. So he bought it for 415, and thanks to your report, gave him the confidence to buy in that particular suburb. And we bought it for 415. It settled yesterday, and the agent said, "You got a really good deal on this. I've just listed next door for 460 grand." So my client made, a lot of money on day one. Yeah. Thank you, Luke.
That's great. Yes, sometimes markets can move very quickly. So the sentiment can change and new buyers come in. So forecasts get made and suddenly there's twice or three times as many buyers in, and agents might have their ear to the ground and are raising prices quickly. So sometimes you can get a return on investment in an extremely short period of time, giving you potentially more equity for your next investment.
And that's what it's all about, right? Just growing your wealth and using data to find those little gems, those pockets. So thank you, Luke. But yeah, let's get back on track and ask some questions. So look, when you think about data, what are the 5 attributes that you think us consumers of data should be looking for?
Yeah. So a big thing is timely. So at Microburbs, we spend a lot of time working out what prices would be if there was enough volume. So as we were just talking about, markets sometimes can move quickly. Now, your average market doesn't change that much from month to month, but particularly in the investor space and in the investor data space, especially, there can be sudden movements. So you have buyers move onto the market. And so we put out our updates, our median prices, we update them weekly as a result when the others go for monthly. And so we can reflect those changes where it goes from,
I'm going to take notes. So timely data, so weekly data isn't better than monthly data, obviously.
That's right. And also allow the curves to be a bit jagged. Yeah. So I've been able to prove that markets can move within a week or two. So if you see overly smooth curves, they're doing that to make it sort of look acceptable and agreeable. But all of that smoothness, what that means is that it's being influenced by transactions that happened a long time ago. That might have been a completely different direction of the cycle. So smoothness can really, it can make it out of date, and it can mean that you're still seeing growth when the growth has actually already stopped. It's just gone up to a high plateau, but with the rolling median, it looks like it's still growing. So for us, it's just like, okay, what is the best price for this week, regardless of all of this smoothing kind of, what is the most reflective price at this particular point in time? Because our focus is very much on the buyer and their decision right now, what's a fair price for that suburb, as opposed to all the other stakeholders that are like looking for something that just, looks good and smooth and, oh, yes, it's swinging and all of that.
Yeah,
Sometimes markets are volatile, and you need to be ready for that volatility. You need to be using tools that keep up with that.
gotcha. Yeah, right. Okay, so the first one is timely. What's the second attribute you think it makes good data?
Another one is relevant to the particular property that you're going to buy. So a median price is reflective of a median property, yeah? But most properties within a suburb are not the median property. They're going to be high or low. There are many sub-markets within an individual suburb. So what you want is a more fine-grained data. You can have different markets, so namely different streets within a suburb, move in different directions. They have different kinds of target markets. One might be for large families that are high end. Another one might be more for your first home buyers or lower end families. So you can have hills and different block sizes. Just the local reputation of individual streets can be influential. So that's why we provide street level data. So median prices on a street level, turnover rates, very importantly, on a street level, all of these things to really reflect the kind of property that you're going to buy, rather than, don't think of properties as just like simply shadow or ratio to what the median is. These actually are different markets that are moving in different directions, following different trends. So it may be that the high end of the market has started to move into the suburb, but the low end is not. So they are quite different. So yes, as relevant as possible and as property specific as possible, going down to the pocket level where you can.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. If I look at my own suburb, I'm lucky enough to live near the water. And obviously, the further away you get from the beach, the less expensive it is. And there's pockets of housing commission and there's pockets of industrial areas as well. So makes complete sense.
Yeah.
But I think up until now, most people weren't aware that you could actually get that sort of data.
Oh yeah, both your beautiful place by the water and the housing commission, neither of them are the median property. And the kind of person who might buy your home is going to be very different to the kind of person who buys the average property there. And so they're just completely different markets. You should think of them separately.
It makes so much sense, doesn't it? It's like real estate agents don't think every house in that suburb is going to be exactly the same price, right? They go in and they explain the differences in your property versus the other property they're selling down the road. And so, all right. Thank you, mate. So number 2, relevance to the property you are looking at is takeaway number 2. All right, number 3.
So scientifically proven to predict capital growth. This is a really big one. So there's lots of indicators out there that are interesting and like paint a picture, but do they actually give you capital growth? If they're not giving you capital growth, or perhaps yield, or a better tenant retention rate, then really materially it doesn't affect you as an investor, and it's likely to be distracting. What you want is a data source that's using metrics that has proven over the long term that it consistently predicts capital growth, and being as scientific about it as possible. So where possible, controlling for other factors, not making lots of ifs and buts about, it's this particular area at this particular time, but just going as universally as possible. So you can just say, this is kind of a law of real estate that this kind of street outperforms over the long term, for example.
And it's so important. We're all in it for capital growth. So to put a science behind it, to prove that you're going to predict capital growth, like that's everything. And there's a lot of people selling reports out there saying, this is where you should be buying. And when I look at the data behind those areas through other sources, I'm like, how can you do that? Like that suburb's already grown, for example, more than 50% in 3 years. Like, why would you recommend that suburb as an example of what you're talking about? So that's music to my ears. Scientifically proven to predict capital growth.
Yeah. So a big one, people can often confuse the amenity value of a suburb versus its growth potential. So it's not that high-end properties. So imagine like your ideal suburb, perhaps it's where you live. You're by the water, you've got a really good school, it's got awesome napland, they're the best people who live there. That doesn't mean that kind of property is just going to go to the moon, and that on the other side of your suburb where it's near the public housing, that doesn't mean that it's going to zero or it's not going to grow. A lot of these things are merely just priced in, and then it's no longer actually influencing subsequent capital growth. So you need to be able to have a clear distinction between those two. What's the value of the property that's already priced in, like existing amenity, versus what are the very specific kinds of things that actually mean more growth in future.
Yeah, fantastic. That's really important. So in summary, third one is scientifically proven to predict capital growth. That's obviously good data. All right, and moving on to number 4, a fourth attribute.
Yeah, so this is kind of related. This is good data empowers you to make decisions with confidence. So it's not just about helping you paint a picture or reassuring you, not leading you down a rabbit hole of analysis paralysis, but it's like, this is the most important data for you. You can always go further and get worried about all kinds of different stuff. But unless you're doing primary research, there is going to be a limit to how much you can do as an individual investor who has limited time.
Yeah.
You're just not going to be able to see every market going back to 1990, for example.
Yeah. And like most people don't have the time anyway to do that primary research that you're talking about, Luke. So yeah, I know that my clients have a lot of confidence as a buyer's agent when they receive the data to show that you should be able to make a decision with confidence that you're going to make money, particularly because your methodology has proven to show capital growth. So confidence is everything, right? Because a lot of people get to that finishing line, they just won't cross and purchase because they just lack that confidence.
Yeah, there's always some new piece of information out there. There's always some reason. So is there just some underlying psychological hesitance to go ahead? Like maybe you're an indecisive kind of person or nervous kind of person, whereas an algorithm is just like, what's the best price? It's just pricing it, yeah? Okay, given these things, given what we know, this is what we see the price to be in the future, and this has been backtested.
Yeah. And
so it takes out all of that kind of emotion.
And you want to jump in before the herds jump in, because as you know, it's too late by the time everyone's polling into a particular suburb or region of Australia. So no, thank you, mate. And that's a really good one. Good data helps you make a decision with confidence is the fourth good attribute. And then number 5, what do you think is another attribute for good data?
Yeah. Number 5 isn't actually good data. This is great data. So this is data that other people don't have. So what you want is an edge. You don't want to just be following what you read in the news and what the most famous pundits are saying, because other people are doing the same thing. So don't follow the herd. Don't act on the same stuff that other people do. As an investor, you want to be going against the herd. You want your own information. This is how the stock market works. This has been established for decades and decades, that if you have an information asymmetry, that means if you know more than the next guy, then that's how you can make a profit. And the sophisticated trading houses will pay a lot of money for rare data and not much money for the same data that everyone else gets. So the same applies in the real estate market. You want to know something that other people don't know. I know it's quite hard for your average person to think this way because they're used to making decisions based on the herd, based on copying others. You don't want to do anything too strange. But if you're in the herd, then by the time you buy, it may be too late. Or it's just the kind of thing that everybody says because it sounds good. Yeah. And the real estate industry is great at getting people in on things where it's a good story, but that good story is not the same as scientifically proven good growth.
Yeah. Oh man, there's so much to unpack here, mate. A good story that's clickbait, it sells advertising. It's not there to make you wealthy, following the herd. I mean, most people, as you know, they buy in their own backyard at the end of the day, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's a good suburb. That you're missing out potentially on other suburbs or other areas that have got better growth potential. So absolutely love that.
Yeah. Buying in your backyard, that is a classic mistake. So you have chosen that area because you think it's a great place to live, and all the people you meet I've also think it's a really great place to live. Yeah. So the level of it's bias upon bias. If you think that your area is going to be the one to grow, and if you're an owner occupier and not a rent investor, you are really doubling down on one area and not spreading your risk. So I would be very careful about going for your own area. I'd only go back to your own area just by chance, having done a big scan of a much wider area. It's pretty unlikely that you're going to end up with your place out of all the places. Most suburbs grow averagely over a 4-year period. They go with the market. So if your goal is to outperform the market, it's a very lazy option to just buy in your own area.
Yeah, but let's go back to what you originally said. Data that other people don't have, giving you the edge, meaning you aren't following the herd. Like, shouldn't we be putting that up in the sky somewhere? So that if you are serious about capital growth, that should be your mantra. What edge can I get before everyone else gets in and makes me wealthy because they're piling in?
Yeah, I mean, people should understand this from sport, for example. You know, if you can run faster or kick the ball better or pass it better, there are certain people that do really well. You know, the person who studies most for the test, like if your goal is to actually do better, then surely you should apply that for the property market. And the people that are doing what everyone else does are just going to perform averagely. And performing averagely is not going to get you more than one home. So with 70% of property investors only having a single investment.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling, isn't it? 70% of investors have only one property and they've stopped at one.
That's it.
All right. So in summary, the 5 attributes you say that lead to good data is 1, timely data. So it comes through as weekly instead of monthly. Number 2, relevance to the property you're looking at. A property by the beach is going to be different to one that's 5 kilometers back near an industrial zone. So relevance to the property you're looking at.
Yes. And also taking you down to the right kind of property within the suburb.
Yes.
So we've got this this property finder tool now where you can apply criteria across all the properties within the suburb, and then it will recommend particular ones that it sees as particularly relevant
in that suburb. You're making it even easier for us investors. And then third one is scientifically proven to predict capital growth, like scientifically proven, not someone's opinion. That's so important. That was number 3. Number 4, good data to help make you make a decision with confidence. And then number 5, one I love that you kept till last, is data that other people don't have to give you the edge.
That's it.
As you can see, I've written those down, mate. So that's what's going to be passed on to all of my clients and using moving forward. So thank you for having me on this podcast, Luke.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining me, John. It's always good.